Let's talk about Antony. Now, Antony is considered by many as a Manchester United flop. And to be fair, from his past performances over the last 1.5 years, you cannot really fault that. He hasn't really produced too much to make us say that his signing has been successful. But can you blame him? Antony came into Man United and scored 3 goals in each of his first 3 games, had a banging start to the season. Remember that this season was when it got cut off halfway through before everyone went to the World Cup. And Antony was going to get a lot of praise and he was a star player, loads of people were excited. I was excited to see him. But just before the World Cup, in a Europa League game, he pulled off his traditional spinning move. And from that point onwards, the media and a lot of so called fans have decided that's reasonable excuse to criticise him. Within less than half a season of being at Man United, having scored 3 goals already in his first 3 games, Antony was getting criticised and being called a flop within less than half a season. He had come into a Man United team that had been terrible for years, come off the worst ever season under a new and is now working under a new manager. Compare that to Jack Grealish, who was already Premier League proven, did not need adjusting to the Premier League, was going into the team where it's easiest to adapt. Man City are the most successful team in England over the last few years. You have to be absolutely terrible to go into Man City and fail. And Jack Grealish did that for the first 1.5 seasons. And no one criticised him as much as they did Antony within half a season. It took Jack Grealish up until after the World Cup to start playing well. He won the Premier League in the first season, did absolutely nothing for them, and celebrated like he was king of the world or whatever. And the media praised him after going into a Man City team that has been successful for so many years and flopping in the first season. Whereas Antony coming in, probably the hardest team you could come into in the Premier League. Man United has so much toxicity around it. They were just coming off the worst ever season with new players, a new manager. Antony had never played in the Premier League before, so he had to adapt to the Premier League, adapt to England, adapt to Manchester, adapt to the way of playing in Manchester, adapt to new players in a struggling squad, and still managed to perform better in the first half of the season than Jack Grealish did, and he was already getting criticised. Whereas Jack Grealish had 1.5 years to prove himself, and barely anyone said anything. Yes, there are people a couple of times who may have said one or two flaws, but nothing as severe as Antony after literally half a season, all because he did a skill move. And let's look at the stats for each of these players. Antony in his first season got 10 goals and 5 assists for Man United in a subpar Man United team, compared with Jack Grealish, who got 6 goals and 4 assists in an excellent Man City side. Yet no one was criticising Jack Grealish as much as they were Antony. People gave Jack Grealish over 1.5 years with very little criticism, and obviously because Jack Grealish has a lot of positivity around him in the media, he's obviously going to get a lot more confidence, a lot more reassurance, and is more likely to perform well. Whereas Antony, who has no backing from the media, no backing from most fans, after having a pretty decent first season to English football. Let's be real, he's a young kid coming into English football, a new league, a very difficult team to play in. Is not a successful side like Man City. And 10 goals and 5 assists in his debut season is very good. And he was still getting criticised. So if he's doing that well in his first season, I understand it's not Ronaldo level numbers, but you've got to remember this is a guy who's come from Ajax and is adapting to a completely new way of playing, and he gets criticised. What is that going to do to him in the next season? He has now got unreal expectations to live up to. That plus all the off the pitch stuff, and it's very clear to see why Antony hasn't performed as well this year. You need to give this guy confidence because every time he steps onto that pitch, he's thinking, if I don't do something incredible in this game, I'm going to get criticised. If Antony has an average game, he's going to get criticised. If Harry Maguire or Marcus Rashford comes out and says they've been receiving too much criticism, the media turns all soft and goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry. We'll praise you now." But if Antony does that, people are like, "Oh, just get back to the game. Focus on your game." Now, do I think Antony deserves to stay at Man United? Do I think there's a player in him? Of course I do. I've seen the player he was at Ajax. And I don't think that it's because he's in a tougher league. I think that he just doesn't try to be as creative or as skillful as he was in Ajax. Because the last time he tried something skillful, he got so much criticism for it. So now he's really dumbed his game down. He's really just trying to be a basic player in order to avoid excessive criticism. It's mainly a mentality issue with Antony. And the only way to really fix that mentality issue is to get behind the player. I believe in Antony and I want to see him getting more game time. And I'm sure that if he gets more game time and if he starts developing some consistency, he will perform for us. And I think he can be a very good player for us in the next few years, only if he can fix his mentality, and he can only do that when he's given confidence by fans and the media. And if you want to criticize a player for being an entertaining footballer, you don't really enjoy football. And if you are one of those who criticizes a footballer for trying to be entertaining, you are the kind of fans who are making this game boring.